Alright folks, welcome back to another episode of the For the Cat podcast. In this episode, we're going to be hitting the Warriors versus Mavericks game, where the Warriors lose it towards the very end of the game. And, in this game, man, before we talk about the game, I gotta get this off my chest before I forget to talk about it. All of the calls that were made down the stretch of the game, utter BS. I mean, there was a whole lot of tomfoolery going on, and I felt that it was coming, because if you guys didn't remember, when we first got Jimmy, it was like the fourth game after Jimmy got traded to our team. We played Dallas in Dallas, right? And if you don't remember, Jimmy drove down the lane towards the end of the game, and he was called for an offensive foul against Kyrie Irving. But upon replay, Kyrie was clearly still moving to his right, so it should have been a blocking foul. But for some reason, the refs reviewed it and still didn't overturn the call. So we got hoed out of that game. And with the way that this game was going, I just felt like something was going to happen. And it did. Draymond Green got called for a flagrant foul on probably the worst flagrant foul of all time. I mean, all he did was just give a little chicken wing to Dwight Powell to his midsection, and he got a flagrant foul off of that. I'm sorry, but I thought flagrant fouls were determined off of wind-up impact follow-through, and instead, he gets a flagrant foul for just sticking his arm into Dwight Powell's chest. I mean, how is that a flagrant foul? That's just insane. And then the foul that he had right after that against Max Christie going to the rim, he clearly wrapped him up to stop him from shooting the ball at the rim. Like, that was a clear basketball foul. That's a clear play on the ball. And then the refs decided to go and review it. For what? Like, what are we reviewing? It's not a flagrant foul. It's not a dirty play. It's a basketball play to stop a player from getting an easy bucket at the rim. Like, they're only making these decisions because it's Draymond. If it was anybody else, they would have let that go. But instead, they decided to make those crazy calls, and that changed, or I wouldn't say that changed the complexion of the game, but it certainly halted any kind of momentum that the Warriors were looking for. But back to the game, let's start with the offense. My goodness, what an incredibly incompetent basketball team surrounded by Steph. Steph went off for damn near 40 and is still winning enough. Steph Curry drops 40 points in the big 2026 and they lose by, how much did they lose by? They lost by, 10? How's that possible? Against a Dallas team that has no true star, has no offensive firepower other than Cooper Flagg, they were able to beat the Warriors with Steph Curry dropping 40 points. Think about that. And in the Charlotte podcast, I was talking about how the Warriors did a good job of doing their job. And in that podcast, I explained that doing your job just means finishing what Steph started on the court. Steph is going to draw two to the ball pretty much the entire game from start to finish. On or off the ball, he will draw multiple bodies. At that point, it is on you to make a play or finish a play. If he draws two to the ball, he gets rid of it. You either shoot a floater, or you swing it across the court, or you dunk the ball, or you lob it up, or you find a shooter and a shooter makes a shot. These are simple things that competent basketball players should be able to do. But today, the amount of clean three-point looks that the Warriors were missing was incredible. I mean, Moses Moody continues to show that he's a streaky shooter. Like, his percentage might suggest otherwise. His last few games might say something else. But I have eyes. I've been watching the game. I've been analyzing Moses Moody. And Moses Moody, he has an issue of making open shots consistently. And it's not just him as well. Buddy Hield. I spoke about Buddy Hield in the last podcast about how Buddy Hield, he's not a reliable player. For every good thing that he does, he's going to give it right back either in that game or the games moving forward. And today, he couldn't buy a wide open transition three. And his jumper is so weird. Like, he has no base, no balance. He kind of drifts when he shoots. It's almost like a slingshot type of shot. I just don't understand how he's so consistent, or he's not even consistent as a shooter. I'm confused as to how he's developed this reputation of being one of the best shooters in the last few years. Like, the stats might say one thing, but in the last like 2 seasons, he's been buns, completely unreliable. And then you move to pods, this guy continues to smoke layups at the rim. And I'll say this, it's better than him passing up layups at the rim, okay? So kudos to him for taking layups, but I can't believe that I still have to give credit to an NBA player for taking layups at the rim. And a lot of the shots that he was taking at the rim today, it's like he just succumbs too easily to athleticism. That one fast break dunk that should have been an easy 2 points, he somehow couldn't finish it. He allowed, Caleb Martin to track him down, and he just missed a dunk. And then there was like 3 different possessions where he missed a left-handed layup going to the rim. He was working off a pick and roll. He changed directions, got downhill, and smoked a left-handed layup. He's left-handed, and he smoked a left-handed layup. Like, what? And then speaking about missing layups, GP2, my goodness, he was even worse. The guy was missing everything at the rim, and his job is to literally finish plays at the rim. There was that one possession where I think it was like towards the end of the third quarter or something, and he missed a layup underneath the basket, and he got the ball right back. Will Richard was wide open in the corner, and he didn't swing the ball to Will Richard. Instead, he tried to like throw it behind his back to Steph, and it was just a dead play. I just don't understand how he's on an NBA team. It's crazy. It speaks volumes about how good Steph is, because Steph is so good on this team within the system that he's able to carve out a job for a bad player like GP2. GP2 has a job because Steph is the CEO. Once Steph steps down, it's over for GP2. It's over for a lot of these guys that are just fringe NBA role players that are supposed to play within the system. That's it. And then Draymond was also in that same tier, missing layups, missing shots. But that's typical for Draymond, so I wouldn't really get into it a whole lot. But going back to Steph made a lot of tough, like, deep shots in this game today. And, usually, in the last podcast, I pointed out how I didn't like Steph taking certain shots, especially like those, like, deep early clock threes. I know he's the greatest shooter of all time, but for him, it's important for him to be strategic about the way he scores the basketball, especially if he's not in a rhythm. But today, he made a lot of those shots even without being in a rhythm like that. Like, he didn't play bad today at any point, but for him, like, he was intentional about taking those shots, and when he makes them, he just becomes unstoppable to really deal with. But then I thought down the stretch in the fourth quarter, he might have lost a bit of steam, just because, he's carrying this offense. This offense has no other source of creation other than Steph Curry. So, I'm not going to blame him for slowing down a little in the fourth quarter. He did make, some tough shots as well. But that's the thing. A lot of the shots were tough. A lot of the shots he had to work hard for. And I feel bad for him. I mean, we're going back to Steph against the world type of hoops. It's honestly sad. Like, there's a reason why in the last podcast I talked about how the Warriors, they need to be honest with themselves. And if you're the Warriors front office, Mike Dunleavy Jr. was in the building. If you're Mike and you're watching that game, do you want Steph Curry to hoop with these boys? It's crazy. It's genuinely crazy. And then to move down to another player that played well, D'Anthony Melli. Melli has been so good. He's literally over-delivering. He's the only role player on this team that is capable of doing more. Because when we first acquired him in the offseason, he was a player that was going to be a secondary ball handler. A player that played off the ball. A player that just made shots. He was pretty much supposed to be another Buddy Hield, another Moses Moody, but better. But no. This season, he has emerged as like a real primary ball handler that can like handle the ball and get downhill with ease. No other guard can get downhill the way that he can, and it's a beautiful sight to see. On top of that, he has some really good short paint touch that no other guard on this team has as well. So kudos to Melly, man. Like, he's doing way more than he should. And if Jimmy Butler had not gotten injured, Melly would have ascended even more. And it's just a shame that now Jimmy Butler is gone. D'Anthony Melly, he's going to have to do a lot more than he's supposed to do. And then, another person that played well despite limited minutes was JK. Now, JK eventually twisted his ankle and he was ruled out for the rest of the game. And I thought that was a good move just because, one, I don't think he was even fit to come back to play anyways. And two, you're going to tank his trade value if you're going to risk it. So there's no point. I mean, JK, he has not changed his mind about the Warriors. He still hates the Warriors. He has animosity towards the franchise, and it's understandable. He wants pretty much a divorce with the Warriors, and the Warriors, they need to give it to him because, at this point, like, we got to move forward. We got to move forward because even though Jimmy Butler's out, we still need to make trades, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But, to just highlight what JK did, I mean, I felt like a lot of his work was like non-wasted movement because in games where he has gotten into trouble, what is where he starts like ball pounding and he's trying to get somewhere on the court, but he can't because he's not a good ball handler. But today he was attacking quicker off of his spot up attacks. That's what you would want if you're Steve Kerr, for him to make his move quickly and get to a spot early. That's the thing. And then, there was this one bucket that he had where he drove like 2 dribbles into the defender. I forgot who was guarding him, but he was like bumping the defender SGA style to create space, and then he stepped back to his right and shot a fadeaway over his left shoulder. That's a shot that he normally doesn't make, but he made it and it looked smooth. And that's the type of shot that he was making in the Minnesota series. It's not, according to the statistics, it's not a part of his game. It's not a part of his identity. However, there's times where he can flash it, but again, it's inconsistent. So, other than that, I thought he had some really good transition attacks. And there was this one play where Pods lobbed the ball over the top to him and he got a great dunk in transition. And when you think about his freak athleticism, you start to wonder, like, why doesn't he do that more often? Why doesn't he just put his head down and sprint in transition and hunt for those lob passes in transition? Because those type of plays are free eats for him. He got up and he was damn near looking eye to eye to the rim. So why doesn't he do that more? Why doesn't he crash the glass and put the ball back into the hoop more often? I don't know. That's a conversation for another day. But JK, limited minutes, good game, efficient game, increasing his trade value. That's what needs to be done. And then now flipping it over to the defensive side, the defense, the biggest problem the whole game was just the Warriors couldn't deal with the Mavericks' athleticism. This was an issue in the last matchup that we had against them on Christmas. That was one of the things that I pointed out. They just couldn't deal with the Mavericks' sheer athleticism going downhill. How many times did you see Brandon Williams continuously get to the basket with that same rip-through move? How many times did you see Max Christie drive hard all the way to the rim? How many times did you see Najee Marshall get all the way down deep into a spot and shoot that little 5 to 7 foot floater that he never misses? How many times did you see Cooper Flagg get to the rim? How many times did you see PJ Washington get to the rim? Like, these guys were attacking the rim at ease, and they were targeting the Warriors personnel as a weakness. Because, in the last podcast, I criticized their defensive execution off the ball. And, in this game, it was still a problem. But the bigger problem in this game was more so the personnel. They were relentlessly attacking Steph down the stretch. And Steph, he just couldn't contain. The help side had to rotate early. And at that point, we're in rotation or we're just fouling. And, the other part of the issue is transition defense. I spoke about how the Warriors need to stop crashing the glass. Guys like Will Richard, GP2, They need to stop crashing the glass because they're not getting rebounds. They're not making a play on the ball to where they can slow down a transition break. So if you have no effect of doing that, then why are you doing it? Just run back on defense. But no, they're purposely making their transition defense harder than what it needs to be. And I think this is where I want to speak a little bit about Will Richard. So, Will Richard, for the most part, as a rookie, he's over-delivered. I mean, 56 overall pick, to be a rotation player, a meaningful rotational player that has helped the Warriors win a couple of games, that's more than you can ask from a 56th overall pick. And he was the NCAA champion, just coming off of that championship and then heading straight into the Warriors and helping them win. He brought that winning energy to the Warriors. However, as the season is starting to go on, you're starting to see more and more about what kind of a player Will Richard is. And you're starting to see some of the deficiencies that are in his game. And the first thing that I'm noticing is that he can't really guard on the ball. He's good at making defensive plays. Like he has a knack for being able to swipe at the ball when somebody's not looking. So like he can rotate from the blind side and make a play on the ball. Or he can poke the ball while somebody's dribbling, like Moses Moody, like GP2. Or he can like read a passing lane and jump it quick. He's good at that, but he's not good at guarding on the ball. He's not good at flattening out driving angles. He's not good at making the ball handler feel him. Every single time he like presses up into the offensive player, he just gets blown by so easily. Like it's a straight line drive going all the way to the rim. And then what's even worse is his off-ball defense. Pay attention to when he guards like off the ball. He's either like ball watching and losing guys and getting back-cutted, or like losing shooters and being late to closeouts. Although he's a seasoned college player, he still has issues defending off the ball at the NBA level. And these are issues that he has to fix, because these are the type of issues that are going to drive coaches crazy. Yeah, it's cool that you're playing hard, but if you're not focusing on the attention to detail, those are the type of plays that can accumulate through the course of a game. And when you look back at a game that you just lost by 10 points, if you had just paid attention to certain possessions, it would have changed the course of the game. So Will, although I do believe in his potential, I know he's going to be a great player for the Warriors, he just has, some fat in his game that he's just got to trim. That's just the story. And then everyone else just kind of faltered to the athleticism. Like Buddy Hield, he guarded with a lot of motor and intention, but still he couldn't do much. Same with Pod, same with GP2. GP2's been cooked. Like he can't guard on the perimeter the same way that he used to. And then Melly did a solid job, but Melly was handling a lot more of the offense, so you can't really blame him. And yeah, I mean, altogether, I thought it was just a poor defensive performance. I thought they should have, had a little bit more pride on what was happening. But I think they're still stunned and deflated about what happened with Jimmy, because, Jimmy, what he brought to the Warriors, it was apparent and it was huge. And now that he's no longer here, they're kind of just losing themselves a little bit. And that's something that they need to address. Like, it's one thing to understand that you're not as good with Jimmy. It's another thing to continuously let that affect you and your ability to compete during the game. So they have to address their identity, because with Jimmy, they're a completely different team. But now without Jimmy, who are they? That's something that they're going to have to figure out. And that's something that the front office is going to have to help them figure out. And I guess this is a good transition. So pretty much while watching this game, I was thinking the Warriors, if they don't want to make a big trade, cool. They don't have to make a big trade. However, they still have to make a trade. They have to make a micro trade to upgrade some of these guards on this team that are just not good. Like, okay, you don't want to trade for MPJ. I get that. You don't want to give up draft compensation for a player that is not going to move the needle. Okay, cool. We get that. However, this team right now, even if Steph comes back and he plays at a great level next season, or let's say you want to keep Jimmy Butler and you want to play the risky game and hope that he's going to come back and be, close to the same player that he was this season, cool, you can do that. But if he comes back and you don't make a trade, is that another wasted season where you just you run it back with the same roster that's just not good? And, ever since the Warriors made it clear that they were shopping Jonathan Kuminga on the trade market, and Dallas was one of the teams that was interested in Kuminga, everybody thought of AD. But for me, I've been calling for the Warriors to trade for guys like Max Christie, Najee Marshall, or PJ Washington. And if you didn't know before why, you probably would know now, because Max Christie is better than everybody on the Warriors. Max Christie would be the starting shooting guard. Max Christie's way better than Moses Moody. You see the way he's shooting the ball this year? He's shooting 45% from three. And he was a player that was considered like a non-shooter heading into the league. And within two or three seasons, he's now a deadly shooter. Look at those shots that he was hitting in transition. They were killing the Warriors. And then on top of that, he's long, he's a good defender. He didn't defend Steph well today, but historically, he hasn't been able to defend Steph well. But against other good players in the league, he's better than a guy like Moses Moody. You'd rather have him out there guarding guys like Shea or Anthony Edwards than a guy like Moses Moody. And Moses Moody isn't even a better player or a better shooter than Max Christie. Moses Moody, his identity is supposed to be a shooter, and he's not better than Max Christie. And Max Christie, he has a way better off the dribble game than Moses Moody. So if the Warriors want to be for real, they have to come up with a package to get Max Christie and Najee Marshall, who did a fantastic job getting downhill, getting to his short paint shots, rebounding the ball, defending. He's just he's a Swiss Army knife, with the exception that he can't really shoot like that. But still, he's a good player. He adds that size, that wing depth that the Warriors need. He adds much needed athleticism. And then PJ Washington, he can buy into that small ball gimmick that Steve Kerr likes to run. If you put Draymond at the 5, putting PJ at the 4 is a good combination. That's a good duo to where they can defend and rebound, and PJ Washington is a good play finisher. He's not the same lob threat as a guy like JK, for an example, but he's a good corner shooter. You can depend on that. So if the Warriors want to get serious, they got to package up JK, Moses Moody, Buddy Hield, and if a first round pick is needed, throw it in there as well, and try to get two of the 3 players that I just mentioned. Max Christie, Najee Marshall, and PJ Washington. All 3 of those guys are valuable role players. Players that can help a team contend for a championship. That's the type of trade that you need to make. And if you're wondering, okay, if we get better role players, what are we going to do to address our lack of secondary creation? Well, that's where you have Jimmy Butler now. Now, here's the thing. Trading Jimmy Butler, it's going to be unethical. It's going to be messed up. But this is the NBA. The NBA is a business. It's never been a personal connection type of venture. It's always been trading for the best players in order for you to win. Now, I get building relationships is part of the NBA. However, you have to put winning above all of that. Now, Jimmy Butler, being the age that he is, 36 years old, tearing his ACL, that's higher risk than when Melly tore his ACL. Melly was 25 when he tore his ACL. He was 10, 11 years younger than Jimmy Butler. And Jimmy Butler, his game is predicated on rim pressure. If he can't get to the rim, what else can he do? So, keeping Jimmy Butler is high risk. Although it's sad, although it's not what you really want to do, at this point, with Steph playing at the level that he is, you got to do what you have to do. And that's where if the Warriors are thinking about making a trade for a guy like DeMar DeRozan, that could be possible. because Sacramento, they've been wanting to trade with the Warriors for the longest now. They want JK, and if JK doesn't work out for the Mavericks deal, then you can always package him up with Jimmy and get DeMar DeRozan. Now, Warrior fans might not want DeMar DeRozan, or they might not like him. However, for what Jimmy brings to the table for the Warriors, DeMar DeRozan is the only player in the market that can match that. Besides AD, but AD is unreliable. DeMar DeRozan is at least still a good offensive player in the NBA. He's got arguably a top 5 mid-range in the game today. Super efficient at it. It's not like he hunts those shots and he doesn't make them. And he also gets to the foul line. Not to the extent of Jimmy, but he does get to the foul line. And then, for him to have that post-scoring presence, that's going to be important for the Warriors, because that's when they can play that motion style offense. So DeMar DeRozan, he brings a lot of good to the Warriors. Again, it's likely not going to be to the same extent as Jimmy Butler, but he's the only guy that can replace Jimmy Butler closely. Other than that, I don't see any other big trade on the market that you can get to replace a guy like Jimmy Butler other than DeMar DeRozan. So that's where can you carve out 2 trades where you get better role players and you get a bona fide second option, star level type of player. Because DeMar DeRozan, he can go off for 30, 40 points on any given night. And on the Warriors, if you're able to get a 4-man alongside Draymond and have him play the 3, I think it's a good option. He can function as a ball handler, a big ball handler in your offense. You can run a lot of inverted stuff that you ran with Jimmy Butler and Steph with DeMar DeRozan. You can run the same stuff. So I would consider it. I honestly would. I would consider it. And if the Warriors do make that move, they would essentially go back to having some sort of a puncher's chance with the way that Steph is playing. All right, that is it, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning into this podcast. Like always, I'll have more coming soon. Take care, everybody. Have a great one.